What's going on, guys? MMA Outlaw back here with another video, and today we are going to be talking about all the fights that have been made this past week. And you can see the screen behind me, and so let's get right into it. UFC 327 is coming to you, Miami, the 305, Dade County, April 11th. What up? Your co-main event will be Joshua Van versus Tatsuro Taira. This is sure to be a great scrap, but I will say I was a little bit disappointed by the matchmaking here. I was hoping to see a rematch of Joshua Van versus Alessandro Pantoja because Pantoja deserves this rematch here. Pantoja has defended the flyweight strap, I believe, 4 or 5 times potentially, and has been the long-standing champion, potentially one of the greatest flyweights of all time. Him and Demetrius Johnson, Mighty Mouse, in there for the conversation. But nonetheless, Joshua Van, Tatsuro Taira should be a great scrap. You know, Joshua Van has great cardio, loves to pull shots to the body. He's a great boxer on the feet. Very, very dynamic. Doesn't throw too many kicks. Will throw some occasional leg kicks, but really just wants to box, get in tight, rip you to the body, rip up top, and throw a lot of combinations. Joshua Van is 9-1 in the UFC and has had some huge wins in the UFC at that. We remember his win against Pantoja. Additionally, he's had wins over Brandon Royval. That was the three-round scrap that had the most significant strikes, I believe, of all time. Additionally, Tatsuro Taira is a ground specialist. He will certainly make this one a scrap. Tatsuro Taira is going to want to take it to the ground. Joshua Van's going to want to keep it standing. The person who can make it their fight, put it in their domain, is the one that's going to win this fight. Tatsuro Taira himself is 8-1 in the UFC. Simultaneously, just like Joshua Van won a split decision against Brandon Royval. We've also seen Tatsuro Taira put on great performances against guys like Brandon Moreno. Additionally, we have seen him beat Alex Perez. Do you remember when he took out Alex Perez and kind of was on the back and just yanked him down and he ripped Alex Perez's ACL to shreds? That was one of the most impressive performances we've seen from a ground opponent. Tatsuro Taira is always game, and Miami, you got Taira versus Joshua Van in your co-main event. So what does that mean for your main event? It means you get a light heavyweight title fight? What? That's right, you're seeing this correctly. ESPN has leaked the fact that there will be a light heavyweight title on the line at UFC 327 in Miami. This is, to be honest, I'm very excited about this fight. This fight is going to be Yuri versus Carlos Ulberg. It's going to be a great scrap. It's going to be for a vacant UFC lightweight belt, or light heavyweight belt, my apologies. Poatan Pereira is moving up to heavyweight to fight Cyril Gane. This is something we've talked about a lot, and the UFC hasn't even said it yet, but we know this stuff is happening, and that gets me to one of my big points in this video. The UFC, what have we come to? This is how we're hearing fight announcements on Instagram? On Instagram? Are you freaking kidding me? Remember when Dana White used to have some freaking passion? Dana, I am calling you out, bro. I'm calling your freaking butt out, bro. This is insane. The UFC, we used to have big fight announcements. Now we're getting a few Instagram posts, and title fights are getting leaked. Title fights are getting leaked on Instagram. Let me show you what Dana White used to be like. We used to have Dana White going on world tours to advertise fights, announcing fights and things with this much passion. Listen to this. When's the last time you've heard Dana White give that much passion into anything in the UFC? This is ridiculous. Dana White used to have some heart. He used to care about the business. Now you're seeing Instagram posts as fight announcements. Now you're seeing crappy press conference introductions with people just saying, and he's on a 4-fight win streak out of the Cameroon, Francis Ngannou. That's ridiculous. Give me some passion. Give me some heart. I want to hear something behind it. This is when the UFC was good, when it was at its peak. I'm asking you, Dana, bring it back. Give me some heart. Look at this too. This is what fight announcements used to look like back in the day, when Dana actually cared. He would put together a whole production just to announce a fight. Look at this.
Right here, and I have been waiting a year for this day to tell you we are.
Look how excited he is.
UFC 261 on April 24th will be in Jacksonville, Florida, with a full house of fans, full capacity.
Even this is better than anything we've gotten recently. This is a whole hype video about a UFC return to a city with two big fighters in it. Let's keep watching.
The Five-Star Veterans Memorial Arena. And you know I'm bringing an incredible card. We have 3 title fights. The welterweight championship, Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal 2.
First of all, when's the last time we had 3 title fights on a card? I'll tell you. It's been a long, long time. It has been a long, long time. And so, where did the fight announcements, where did they go? He used to put together a whole video, talk with passion, and no one would know what was coming. And then he dropped this video and the UFC fan base would get lit. Everyone would be so hyped. Now, we get nothing. Radio silence from Dana White. The UFC Instagram will just throw up an Instagram post and call it a day. This is ridiculous. I demand more from you, Dana White. This is the sport I love and care about so much. And I'm watching you ruin it in front of my eyes. Put me in charge. I'm telling you. I will get this stuff right. I will speak with passion. Dana, I am begging you, bring the glory days of the UFC back. Bring your passion back to the freaking sport.
And so now, I will try and bring you some of the passion that Dana White could not. I will start to bring some of the fire to these fights that Dana White has lacked in these past few years. And so, for this second fight that we got for UFC 327, we got Dominick, the Devastator Reyes, taking on Johnny Walker, a wild boy, Mr. Worm himself, Mr. Get Hurt while celebrating. Dominick Reyes was on a downfall in his UFC career after he beat Jon Jones. Do not play with me. Dominick Reyes beat Jon Jones. He is the only man to beat Jon Jones in the world, except Gustafsson might have beat him too. But Dominick Reyes definitely beat him. And Dominick Reyes was on a little bit of a downward slide in the rest of his career since he fought Jon Jones, losing to guys like Jan Blachowicz, getting back spinning elbowed by Yuri Prohaska, sent into the absolute shadow realm by my boy Yuri. But you know we love Dominick Reyes here. We're a big Dominick Reyes fans. And Johnny Walker is a very, very good matchup for him. Johnny Walker coming off a win against Song Ming Yang himself. When Johnny Walker was coming into the UFC, everyone thought he was going to be the next big thing. A wild man that could potentially challenge Jon Jones in the future. But instead, we get Dominick Reyes versus Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker's been inconsistent throughout his career. You know, we've seen him get KO'd flat by Jamal Sweet Dreams Hill. We've seen him knocked out a lot, and he always has a little bit of a weird reaction. You know, the blimp outside of the car place. You know, Johnny Walker always gets KO'd like that somehow. And so, Dominick Reyes versus Johnny Walker. I think Dominick Reyes is going to KO Johnny Walker, and I just know this is going to be a great fight. Miami, you are in for a treat. Moving on to the next one, Azamat Murzakanov versus Paulo Costa. I do not understand why this matchup was made. I talked about this a little bit in my light heavyweight video, fixing the UFC light heavyweight division. If you haven't seen that, definitely go check it out. And so, Azamat Murzakanov, coming off of a big knockout win over Alexander Rakic, is 6-0 in his UFC career, undefeated, the professional. Taking on Paulo Costa, I know Costa's coming off of a big win against Roman Kopylov and is starting to slowly rebuild himself into a great fighter in the light heavyweight division. I'm surprised. Costa's going up to light heavyweight. I'm pretty sure he's been fighting at middleweight. So I guess he's off some of that secret juice. I'm curious to see what Murzakanov has to offer here. I don't think this is a great fight for him. I don't love the matchup. I still think he wins, but I don't love the matchup, and it doesn't really do much for him. It doesn't move him forward at all in the division. He's on the older side. I would like to see Azamat Murzakanov get a chance to potentially challenge for a belt one day. And so I don't think this Costa fight does anything for him. I do think he beats Paulo Costa. I think it's a difficult fight at that. I think he probably wins like a 29-28 decision. But UFC 327, this is another great fight. Miami, you are certainly in for a treat. And so moving forward, UFC 327 gets Curtis Blaydes versus Josh, the Incredible Hulk Hokit. I believe I had Josh Hokit moving up, fighting someone between that like 10 to 15 range in my heavyweight video. But Josh Hokit gets a big call. I had Josh Hokit fighting Derek Lewis on the UFC White House card, but instead Josh Hokit gets an even bigger step up in competition. I thought Derek Lewis would have been perfect for him. Lewis has some of that KO power, but Josh Hokit could definitely drown Derek Lewis and KO him like we've seen Derek Lewis KO'd many times before. But Curtis Blaydes, coming off of a win against Rizvan Kuniev, is getting Josh Hokit. I thought Curtis Blaydes would get someone a little bit further up in the rankings, but I thought they would potentially give him a Spivak, and let's see that fight happen. But Josh Hokit gets moved forward very far in the rankings, and this is going to be a big fight for the Incredible Hulk, Mr. Chael Sonnen himself, Mr. The Ladies' Gaze, the friend of all the days. Curtis Blaydes versus Josh Hokit. Josh Hokit is a great man on the mic. The UFC wants to push him forward. The UFC wants to see this man win. And I think he gets it done versus Curtis Blaydes. I recognize this is a big step up in competition. I would have liked to see the UFC give him, a guy kind of in between this, like a Derek Lewis, like potentially an Ante Delia, like a guy, like a Marcin Tybura, like just a guy that's a little bit farther back, not quite Curtis Blaydes level, but Josh Hokit getting pushed up the heavyweight rankings. If he wins this, who knows? We could see Josh the Incredible Hulk Hokit challenging for a belt sometime in the near future. It's probably this and then one more, and then a title fight for Josh Hokit. So you can see what the UFC is trying to do with him. A big fight here on UFC 327. And so moving forward, UFC 327 has a great fight here, a striker's delight in Kevin Holland versus Randy Rude Boy Brown. Randy Brown had that nasty KO over Nicholas Dalby. People have been hyping up Randy Brown throughout his entire career. A very rangy striker, has a lot of power in the hands. Honestly, this is kind of a mirror matchup between the two. And I think a mirror matchup in this fight actually favors Kevin Holland. I do think Randy Brown is going to be a little bit better here on the feet. I think Randy Brown may catch him in some moments, but I think Kevin the Trailblazer Holland actually could get knocked down here in this fight and turn something into a crazy submission. I know Kevin Holland is not a ground fighter, but he does have that Travis Lutter BJJ black belt, and so I think we can see good things on the ground if it goes there. Great submission skills from Kevin Holland, like we've seen him submit Michal Olizechek. We've seen him submit other guys in the UFC before, and impressive submissions at that. And so I think Kevin Holland will get this done either by decision or submission against Randy Brown, but a great fight. This is certainly one you're going to want to tune into. Will be very active. Two guys who like to stay at range and two guys who tend to like to strike. And so should be a striker's delight here in Miami-Dade County. You are in for a treat. And so moving forward, we have Tatiana Suarez versus Loopy Godinez. I'm not going to go into this fight very much because Tatiana Suarez should wipe the floor with Loopy. I know Tatiana Suarez did not look too good in her last performance against Zhang Mingyang. But Zhang Mingyang, she is just a different woman. She might be the best women's MMA fighter we've seen other than in a Valentina. Zhang Weili at her weight class is as dominant as we have seen anyone. At strawweight, at 115, at 125, potentially Valentina can take her. But at strawweight, no one can beat Zhang Weili. And we saw that against Tatiana Suarez. We thought Tatiana Suarez could potentially upset Weili. We know Suarez has an incredible ground game, but she unfortunately could not get the job done. Zhang Weili was too well-rounded. And Loopy Godinez brings a similar style, likes to box a little bit, is very, very well-rounded, but is just not on the same skill level as Weili. And so give me Tatiana Suarez to beat Loopy Godinez by decision or submission. Another great fight on UFC 327, one that could be a little bit boring, but very high level, albeit. And so moving forward, we have Cub Swanson versus Nate the Train. Not much to say here. Cub Swanson, a UFC vet, has been a mainstay in the featherweight division. Before he used to fight at 135, he is an absolute monster. Cub Swanson, a UFC, just a legend. I was going to say GOAT. He's certainly not up in GOAT status at all. But everyone who loves the UFC, has been around the UFC, loves a Cub Swanson fight. And so Nate the Train Landwehr, he always brings it to all of his fights. A very talented fighter, a very gritty fighter. We've seen him in absolute wars and going the distance, just getting beaten up and turning the tides. It has been incredible. I believe we saw him against David Onama. Yes, there was the David Onama fight. That was an absolute scrap, a total war for Nate Landwehr. And so Nate the Train is always in fights like that. And you just love to see fighters who just engage, relentlessly move forward, do not care about getting hit, with reckless abandon, throw their punches. I think this fight really favors Nate the Train. But I do think Cub Swanson can clip anyone. And Cub still got some of that power, even at 40 or 41 years old. And so, moving forward, UFC 327 also has my boy, Kyle Daukaus, the Philadelphia product. We're big Daukaus fans here. We love the Daukaus boys. Everyone from Philly that's fighting in MMA, Algio MMA, those guys are great. The Daukaus brothers, those guys are great. Huge fans of what's going on in Philadelphia MMA. And Chris Daukaus is fighting Vicente Luque. This fight is totally going to be a scrap. I think Chris Daukaus finishes him in round. I'm sorry, not Chris Daukaus. Chris Daukaus is Kyle Daukaus' heavyweight brother. Kyle Daukaus finishes Vicente Luque in round 1. He has incredible pop in the hands, has really good jiu-jitsu. He does have a susceptible chin. We've seen him get cracked before, but a BJJ black belt with really, really good hands. I think Kyle Daukaus deserves to. Yeah, Kyle Daukaus. I'm sorry, I keep tripping myself up with the Daukaus boys. I think Kyle Daukaus deserves to be in the UFC. He got cut before. He's back, coming off of a big win, 1-0 in his new run in the UFC, taking on Vicente Luque. I really believe the Daukaus boys are back, and Kyle Daukaus is going to KO Vicente Luque. This one is going to be an absolute scrap. And so, let's run through a few more fights just so you know what's going on around the UFC. We got Sean Brady taking on Joaquin Buckley, a key welterweight matchup between number 6 and number 9 in the rankings, taking place April 25th in the UFC Apex. This will be a main event. I'm really disappointed that this is an Apex fight, but it will be a very, very good fight at that. I'm very excited to watch this one. My Philly guy, Sean Brady, stand up, represent. I know he's coming off of a KO loss to Michael Morales. I know Sean Brady is hungry. He is ready to get after it. Sean Brady is going to beat up Joaquin Buckley. We've seen him dismantle guys like Leon Rocky Edwards, like Gilbert Durino Burns. And Joaquin Buckley, while he has had some good performances against guys like Wonder Boy Thompson, that was a crazy KO that he just leaped into, has had really good performances against guys like Nursultan Ruzaboyev. But I think Sean Brady, the Philly product, the wrestling maniac, can get it done here against Joaquin Buckley in the main event. Sean Brady, my guy, Philly represent. Moving on, we got Renato Moicano versus Chris Duncan. Chris Duncan gets his opportunity to catapult himself into the lightweight rankings. Renato Moicano has had incredible performances. We remember when he beat the living crap out of Benoit Saint-Denis. That was a great fight by Moicano. But we've seen Chris Duncan, has, I believe it's 3 submission wins of his last 4. Just a really crafty guy. Doesn't look too fast, honestly. Looks kind of sloppy. Doesn't even look too great of a fighter. But he just wins. He's just one of those guys. He gets in there. He's been an underdog in a lot of his fights. He gets in there. He just kind of scraps it out, and he just finds a way to win. He's one of those guys that Renato Moicano, we remember when we called Dan Hooker a turtle in a tree. Well, it looked like Renato Moicano was the turtle in the tree when he got put in that freaking lightweight title fight that Arman Sarukian ruined. I'm still mad at you for that, Arman. That January card, Hanato Moicano stepped up on short notice when I believe he was supposed to fight Benny Dariush. He ended up fighting Benny Dariush later, and he lost to Benny Dariush. Hanato Moicano, I believe, has lost 2 in a row, fighting Chris Duncan, trying to hold on to his lightweight ranking. That will surely be a good fight. And so next, we have Gilbert Dorino Burns taking on Mike Malott. Winnipeg, Canada, stand up. Your guy, Mike Malott, is back for a main event. Gilbert Dorino Burns, we know him. He's been around the UFC for a long time. A very, very talented fighter. We've seen him compete for belts against Kamaru Usman, unfortunately get knocked out. We've seen him at the highest highs and the lowest lows, and I believe Gilbert Dorino Burns may be coming off of 4 losses in a row. He's lost to Jack Della Maddalena and lost to many others as well. So we know Gilbert Dorino Burns at this point in his career is a very beatable fighter. But can Mike Malott, the man who gassed out to Neil Magny, he lost to Neil Magny. Are you kidding me? Neil Magny, the gatekeeper Neil Magny, you're going to lose to him? So Gilbert Burns does have a chance here in this fight. We've seen Mike Malott gas out before, in front of his home fans too, as well. Gilbert Dorino Burns has very, very high level ground game. And that's where Mike Malott gassed out against Neil Magny. And so I really do think there's a chance Gilbert could win this fight, but I do not think Mike Malott will let that happen. Canada, represent, stand up in front of your home crowd. I believe he's going to piece him up on the feet early. I believe he may be able to take him down and hold him for a little bit, but I believe Mike Malott is going to want to stay on the feet. Gilbert Burns may throw some big hands, but I think Mike Malott is going to be the cleaner fighter, and Mike Malott will absolutely beat him over 5 rounds. But I think Mike Malott catches him on the chin and puts him away. I think Mike Malott by 2nd or 3rd round KO, just a little bit too clean for Gilbert Dorino Burns, who will give up his welterweight ranking spot. And Gilbert Burns will unfortunately continue the downward slide in his career. I believe the UFC may give him one more chance after this one if he were to lose, but then you may find him soon on the UFC chopping block, which would be very, very, very sad to see, considering how much Gilbert Burns has given the UFC, how amazing his fights have been, how many highlight reels he has had. But there comes a time for everyone, and Father Time might be calling your name, Gilbert. And so lastly, we have Drew Dober versus Michael Johnson being added to the UFC 326 card that's happening just a few weeks from now, March 7th, in the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. The headliner of that card is Charles Du Bronx Oliveira versus Max Holloway for a BMF title. And I do have to say it here. Drew Dober versus Michael Johnson. This is going to be an absolute scrap. You know, Drew Dober is famous for always wanting to throw hands, always being willing to go at it. And Michael Johnson is a UFC vet. He's been around the UFC for a while, fighting the likes of Dustin Poirier and many, many, many distinguished lightweights in his prime. And now Michael Johnson is back on a 3-fight win streak, revitalizing his career. But I will say, whenever Drew Dober happens to fight someone who, is of the other race, he always wins. And whenever he fights someone who's white, for example, Matt Frivola, he just always gets KO'd, and it doesn't make any sense. It's literally as if Drew Dober is a racist. But I will say this fight will be fun nonetheless. I'm hoping my boy Michael Johnson gets it done. He is an elite fighter at range. I always love it when the UFC legends are able to stick around and, kind of revitalize their career. Who thought Michael Johnson would be on a 3-fight win streak in 2026? An amazing fighter, has been around the UFC for a while. Would love to see him get another win. But those are all the matchups that the UFC has made this week. Thank you for joining me to talk about them. As always, MMA Outlaw here, MMA Outlaw TV on YouTube, MMA Outlaw TV on Instagram, MMA Outlaw TV on TikTok. Please check me out, like and sub if you enjoy the content, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.